everybody, and welcome to the Dissecting Fiction podcast. I'm Vinny Murphy.
And I'm Christian Kutlick.
And today we're doing another episode of Dissecting Fiction Goes to Disney. This time, as with most of the times, Disney World. And we'll be joining Roseanne, the show and the woman, on their trip to Disney World. Their trip to Disney World comes in episodes 17 and 18 of Season 8, airing on February 20th and 27th of 1996. The first is called We're Going to Disney World. That's written by Matt Berry, pretty much involved with all of the creative aspects of the show over its time. He wrote Crocodile Dundee Goes to Los Angeles, everyone's favorite film. And apparently he was a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent in Endgame. I just happened to notice that on his IMDb. The second episode, written by Alan Steffen, once again, a writer, producer on the show, pretty much connected to the entire thing throughout. And both episodes are directed by Jill Mancuso. She directed 51 of the episodes, but worked on the majority of the show in some capacity. She's kind of all over the board too. As we've mentioned before, and I don't know if it's just a sign of the times in 95, going into 96, seems mostly like writers' rooms at this point. You know, people are getting specific credits. It's probably for coming up with general plots for the episode, but I would assume that everyone kind of has a little hand in it.
There's a whole production background on Roseanne. It is somewhat famously ran almost solely by Roseanne, and towards the end of the seasons, and toward the end of the show's run, these frictions got worse and worse, which is why Roseanne only lasted like 10 seasons. So I'm surprised there was even a Roseanne Disney episode at all.
Yeah, we'll talk about that too, because it's interesting. I almost forgot, and I would feel terrible if I missed this. The second episode of this 2-episode run is called Disney World War II, which is pretty funny.
Yeah, I thought that was a really good title.
So the first episode opens up with Dan, Roseanne's husband, leaving his job. He also takes a bunch of things as he goes, which is pretty funny. But that really sets up the impetus for this plot, which is Dan finds out after he's left that he has a fairly robust severance package, and Roseanne decides that they're going to take the entire family to Disney World, which is really funny to me because every time I see that, I'm just like, just think how much that would actually cost. Like, I don't care how much money he got. That's a ton of money. Through a bunch of different steps, the entire family plus Darlene's boyfriend David, who, you know, is really principal cast at this point of the show, all end up getting plane tickets. Roseanne has to fake canceling some to make sure they can all get on the plane, which was pretty funny. And so they all end up on this flight to Florida. Important to note here that this is Sarah Chalk as Becky, the second Becky, as it were. The original Becky had been in for most of this season, but due to her class schedule, from what I read, she was not able to go to Florida, so they switched it to Sarah Chalk, who would then take over in the last season entirely anyway. The first episode here is largely on the plane to Disney World. I thought this worked really, really well.
I did too. I like, even back in the 90s, and I think even now, the Roseanne show has an interesting perspective. I'm not talking about the reboot. I'm talking about the original Roseanne run. Has a really interesting perspective on how, I guess, low working class people interact with the world around them. And Roseanne brings a really good voice to all of that. I feel like down to earth, solid earth voice to all of that. And I think she brought that out really well with how everybody decides how they're going to Disney, who they choose to go to Disney with, how they even get there, how they even plan it. I thought that was all really funny and interesting. And I think it's a really good encapsulation of that whole mindset, I guess, that whole getting to Disney, which is something that has not been shown in the other Disneyland episodes.
Yeah, it's largely the part that they skip. And I think you're right. It is something that makes it kind of interesting and unique in that sense. It's also fun, too, because they really highlight the fact that the Connors aren't, as wealthy as everyone else who's gone to Disney World so far in these shows. And so they're kind of trying to figure out how to get this flight. And they're not used to going on vacation, which I thought was a great gag with Dan like wanting to turn everything off before they left the house and like freaking out. Um, so we get them on the plane, and I mean it's everybody. It is Dan, Roseanne, Darlene, Becky, David, Jackie, DJ, Beverly, the grandmother, and Mark, plus 2 babies, all going to Disney World. This portion of it is all very obviously kind of shot on the sound stage as normal. That's fine. The gags are largely based around the Connors being kind of annoying on the plane. And once again, I think they do a good job. I have to say, as simple as this sounds, saying it out loud now, the performances are really good in this show. I think Roseanne's actually like the weakest. You have John Goodman as Dan. Like, John Goodman is a guy who I don't know how he's missed an Oscar. Like, he's just a great actor. He plays everything dead on. And I think, the rest of this cast are of that caliber. I think he's probably a notch above everybody. But, you have Johnny Galecki as David. It's a really great cast that really make these sort of subtle jokes and these jabs work.
I kind of agree with you there, thinking about it now, because like I'm not just thinking about John Goodman and Barton Fink, which was a great role. But I'm also thinking about like how I think behind the scenes Roseanne was getting more and more control of the show, and I think like when they give her the one-liners, it always feels like she's winking at the camera, like the spotlight's solely on her, which is weird. I think her joke delivery is really funny though, and she is still really funny. But I agree with you there that it does feel like she's kind of like breaking out of the role and say like, "Look at me, this is my show," and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's very much like, and this isn't as harsh of a criticism as it might sound. Her delivery is stand-up delivery, and that's how she delivers the lines, while the rest of the cast are acting through the characters to deliver the lines. And it comes off a little stiff, but not in like a terrible way, because it isn't real, and you know that.
Well, that's what I appreciate about Roseanne, is that, when it needs to get real, it can get like really real and get really deep into those emotions. But also, like, Roseanne just has a general contempt for like the sitcom comedy landscape, which is still holds up really well now, and I think it's still funny. Like I've said in a couple of when we did the top 10 episodes or whatever, I like contempt in general in my shows. So that was a strain I really like to follow throughout this.
Yeah, so, simple plot here in this first episode. The sort of end game to all this is the Connors all move up into an empty first class, and we are informed by the flight attendant that it was okay because the rest of the passengers voted, and they decided they should all stay up there.
Yeah, there was a lot of great background with the extras too, like rolling their eyes and things like that, because they do actively make them all annoying. They're jumping over the seats to like point at each other and figure out where they're going. They're just yelling at each other from across the plane and everything.
Yeah, they're also like subtly like elbowing people in the head and stuff. It's really well done. It's just, like you said, simple plot, but really well executed. We get to Disney World in the next episode. It opens with, I think for the first time in any of these, they're in a hotel room, but it is not actually a hotel room. They're shooting on a set. That's pretty obvious. The only footage of Disney World for Roseanne is going to be in the parks themselves. Just to give you a quick rundown of where everyone is with their plots here. Roseanne and her sister Jackie kind of go off into the Magic Kingdom. Dan finds out that the only place to drink is Epcot, so he heads that way. Darlene, David, and DJ are all together. Darlene being the needed curmudgeon that every series needs while in Disney World. And shock of shocks, that might change. Beverly the grandmother is with the 2 babies. Becky and her husband Mark are together. Their basic plot is the characters hitting on Becky and Mark, who is constantly portrayed as an idiot, not reacting well, and it's some of the best lines in it. To clarify with Beverly, she starts singing in the park and a crowd gathers around her. I would say, shockingly, Roseanne and Jackie don't really have too much to do in the episode. They're more just being kind of pains and messing with cast members, which I thought was kind of funny.
It was funny. I think again, I like the attitude Roseanne brings, and that like they don't ever really go on vacation, so they're gonna take they're gonna take a mile out of an inch and everything. They're gonna wring all the entertainment they can out of this experience, even at the expense of others. Which I which if you've ever been to Disney World, you've seen those types of people that are like, this ruined my vacation, or like just being generally nasty. And I like that Roseanne kind of brings that up to the forefront. But it's still lighthearted. It's not like crazy or anything. I do like seeing Dan drunk at Epcot, interacting with some of the cast members there, which was funny.
Yeah, not unlike Carl Winslow, he has some of like the best, like most pure moments in the episode. And also I think I would say probably the character used most to promote the parks. We'll get back to that too. I think, your obvious storyline with Darlene, David, and DJ, where Darlene eventually runs into Winnie the Pooh and that breaks her into the Disney magic. And then she doesn't want to go on any of the rides. She just wants to sit on this bench while David and DJ are kind of running around trying to do stuff, but also trying to make her happy. More so David, of course. But then she becomes like a Disney maniac after that. That's really all there is there, but not unlike Full House. I think this was like super well balanced. Like it never got boring.
No, I think all the jokes really landed well. The only part I didn't really like was Darlene just like sleeping on the bench and like yelling at her boyfriend for going on the rides. Like I know she's supposed to be the curmudgeon, but like come on, uh, that just felt really weird to me and like just mean, I guess.
I would say also my only issue with that is like, having grown up watching the show, Darlene was, sarcastic and things like that. But if she wanted to have fun, I don't see like why the character would really act like that. I think they needed I think she was the closest thing they had to someone who would be a complete curmudgeon, so they had to go with it.
Well, I can see her like looking down on this, being like, "Oh, it's all fake," it's just like dumb bullshit and things like that. Because she's supposed to be somewhat of an intellectual and she's supposed to be somewhat pretentious with her attitudes and things like that. I do really like how they broke her with the Disney magic, and that she sees Winnie the Pooh and then she's reminiscing about how the first book she read was Winnie the Pooh, and then eventually she's like, "Oh my god, I'm hugging Winnie the Pooh." I thought that was really sweet.
Yeah, and I think that's what that kind of makes it a little worth it. I do really like the stuff with Becky and Goofy, where there's a lot of really good lines in there.
Goofy's always like a player in these. It's weird. He's always flirting with women.
He's a bachelor, He's the only one of the Fab Five.
Yeah, I guess
but he's a dog. And so is Goofy.
Was Extremely Goofy movie out at this point?
Extremely Goofy. Oh man, that's a good point of research. Hold on.
I don't think it was. I think that was like 2001 because that was the big skateboarding craze.
Oh, you're on something though, because the Goofy movie's 95. So yeah, maybe that's why we're seeing so much Goofy. We got to promote that movie. I think you got it. I think that's the reason we see Goofy so much in this like debonair role.
But did that movie flop?
No Disney movie really flops. We've talked about this. They all become classics after 10 years. Doesn't matter. Home on the Range, classic.
I will. Maybe in like 50 years.
Anyway, so this tidies up pretty quick at the end. Like as you're saying, this really light on plot, good on gags. Everyone ends up at Epcot at the end for Illuminations, and it's a really nice looking scene at the end. Everyone is really into the Disney stuff. Beverly the grandmother is giving advice to Mickey Mouse about breaking out into dramatic roles. So I think that's a good place to talk about these through lines that we keep noticing. First off, yes, in this one, even in Roseanne, they do not act as if the characters are people in suits. They act as if they are the characters. They even make a joke about how the animatronics are also people.
Well, yeah, Roseanne's just pointing at random people. It's like, is that an animatronic? Is that an animatronic? Yeah. And then eventually she's just like throwing popcorn at people and stuff like that.
Maybe someone told them what happened to Blossom and how Abraham Lincoln was just being creepy and came to life. If you haven't listened to that episode, I'm going to put a link in the description for this one because Abraham Lincoln, man, kind of a weirdo. Uh, so that's like a big through line in all of these. I would say you have like a little bit of romance with Dan and Roseanne, but not quite as romantic as the other ones we watched. Way less of a focus on that. However, it was blatant that what they were trying to promote most was Epcot. Largely the World Showcase. And the reason I say that is because of the next one of these. We're going to talk about a parallel to that. The Magic Kingdom always gets a little bit of shine. They always try to get a couple of thrill rides in there. In this case, we get Big Thunder Mountain. They talk about Space Mountain. A continuing theme of Disney World not just being for kids. I would say in this one, it's almost like it's more for adults than kids.
Yeah, I think they're trying to show like the big showcase was with Dan getting to drink all the beers around the world. That was his big draw. And they even end the first episode with him seeing that giant like pillar of beer from the British pub. And him getting really excited at that. The yard. Yes. He's like, what's the yard? They show him. It's just like a giant like glass of beer. Then the rest of the episode you see him running around drunk. And I think they were just trying to show like, even though Epcot is kind of kiddie, Figment was still around at this point. The front of the park was still like more family oriented, but the back of the park, that's where you get to party. That's where you get to drink with Mickey Mouse. That's where the real action is.
Yeah, and I think they were trying to use the platform that they had. Roseanne was going to skew a little older, and I think that's why we see those little differences. But in the end, everyone is ecstatic to be at Disney World. They had a wonderful time. All the characters are real, and I think that really brings us to like pretty much where this ends. There is a cool stinger where I guess Bellhop from the hotel ends up showing up at their house as a joke because it was the same backlot. But it's executed well. It's funny, breaks the fourth wall a little bit. I think if I'm going critically looking at this might be the best anyone goes to Disney as far as like, I haven't seen every single one yet. I think there's a couple near the end of our list which I've never seen before, but just watching this with more of a critical eye, I think this was the best written. I think it was the best executed. It's not my favorite. We'll be getting to my favorite. And my favorite is my favorite for other reasons, but I think we could say 100% it's the best out of the ones that we've gone over on the show as of yet. And I will go further, having seen a couple of the ones we're going to cover, and say that it might be the best in general.
Yeah, I think this is absolutely the funniest one we've seen so far. I think maybe Full House is the most competently made. It is the most well executed. But like, I didn't really laugh at all during Full House. But it is like, I know people make fun of Full House a lot for being like, kind of garbage or bland. Extremely bland is probably a better word. But it is so tightly written. But here's like joke after joke just kept landing, and like the characters were really well. It might not have like a super tight plot, but like the jokes were incredibly funny in this.
Yeah, I agree. I think it took, and it could have very well, taken inspiration from Full House. They do make a joke about Full House in the first episode, if I'm correct. I think it very much did take inspiration in the structure, and I think they executed the comedy better. It's as good structurally and better comedically. All right, well, that brings us to the end of this episode of Dissecting Fiction Goes to Disney. If you enjoyed this, please let us know. Click that thumbs up, bells, and 5 stars, and subscriptions, everything. Keep an eye on some of this. We may be running some contests for the first time in a long time in the coming futures, and that's how we figure that out, right? We look at the thumbs up and the subscriptions and all those thingies. So make sure you start doing that. Some things are coming down the pipe. If you want to follow us on social media to get a little update on any of that or any of our new content, just type Dissecting Fiction in with your favorite social media. I'm sure we'll pop up. We're pretty well established on there at this point. If you're looking for comics, you're looking for statues, anything in that area, check out ToyStoreGuide.com. They'll hook you up with some great local businesses, and be sure to support all your other local businesses in these times too. Christian, you got anything else this week?
check out Wonder Woman Dead Earth. This was a cool comic book by Daniel Warren Johnson. It is about Wonder Woman in the post-apocalypse, and it is a really neat interpretation of Wonder Woman, and it has tons of bloody, violent action in it.
I know we all love violent, bloody action, as all these Disney shows are proving. Well, anyway, I think that about does it. I'm Vinny Murphy.
And I'm Christian Kotlik.
And thanks for listening.